the show, despite what you might have thought.
That's right. The show must go on. Hello and welcome to It's Happening Show, community grassroots media for the people, by the people. I'm Jose Gloria.
I'm Dylan Thompson. We're your host tonight.
We are your host indeed.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, It's Happening is a movement of the heart and of the mind. It's the energy of the universe that creates waves inside us and all around us, which allows us to activate, motivate, and elevate vibrationally and intellectually towards love, truth, justice, and wisdom. It's happening in every which way.
It's Happening is a culture of empowerment. It's people having the right to exist and participate as equals. It's a dream of what the world could be. For the future we want is only possible if we make it happen. Yeah, that's right. Different inflection there. Make it happen. So stand up, get informed, and fight back.
Fight back.
Aye.
You could be in the world, anywhere in the world right now, but you're here with us, so we thank you because of you.
It's happening. Woo!
Woo! Feeling zany today.
Right, yeah, I'm waking up. Just yelling a bit is helping me wake up. Good exercise. Good way to start the show. You know,
that's right.
A little bit of needless yelling.
All right.
Good. I hope you got that out of your system.
Yeah, so glad everybody that is joining us. Just took a little small hiatus.
Vacation there.
Vacation, yeah. I traveled. I went out of town. I went to highlights. I went to Horseshoe Bend. If anybody's ever been there in Page, Nevada, it's really, really cool. There's the other spot with the caves that we're gonna go to, but it was closed because of COVID. That was sad. But man, I don't use the word majestic often, but Horseshoe Bend, similar to Grand Canyon, absolutely majestic.
AF,
yeah. Yeah,
pretty much.
And I went to Sedona. Anybody ever gone to Sedona? Then you should, because that's where all the hippies go.
Really now?
Yeah.
Is that the liberal bastion in the desert there?
Yeah, it's a new age haven for sure.
So definitely getting sound healings and kind of
There's definitely crystals involved.
Crystal will be dangled.
And white shamans and women's. Yes, all of that.
That's right.
Yeah.
So it has a lot of nature-y aspects, right? Some like red rocks and stuff like that. No?
Yeah, and then at sundown they turn kind of orangey. It's just really, really pretty. Being out in nature. Nature's cool.
Yeah, I was wondering how tourism is in this day and age, but it looks like you went mostly to outdoorsy places.
Yeah, no, exactly. Outdoorsy places. So, it's cool. A lot of exercise, a lot of, beautiful, epic pictures. Yeah. And, it was a good way to, enjoy myself after life after Facebook. So hopefully people are sharing this or watching this, but I wouldn't know because I'm not on Facebook. So.
Oh no, how is that happening? How is that working?
Dude, it's very much
all right. We'll just neither of us are on the media and to communicate with our audience. I guess write us a letter and we might get to it in a few shows. So we'll give our mailing. I think wait, hold on. I'm hearing that we have a PO box now that we'll be receiving handwritten letters. So we're pretty high tech.
Truly, life is what happens, and you don't post about it. So unplug your mind, baby. We're doing what is it? Tune in and tune out type of stuff. Yeah, I'm here for it.
There you go.
I read this book called Digital Minimalism, and I encourage digital minimalism. I don't know, leave one or two social media sites for a while, see, remember what life was like. All of
Yeah,
that.
so yeah, it's weird when I go outside. It's just like everything's like unbelievably tactile, and like people are just actually in front of you, and it's just like whoa. Like before, I could minimize you. Like this is the kind of interaction you're in a box right now, and I can hit minimize right now. You just went away, but man, out there, it's just like woo.
Yeah.
Oy.
The pixelation is out of this world.
It's a really high def
in this here world.
for sure.
Yeah, no, but yeah, it's crazy. But definitely hibernation mode and all that good stuff. Figuring out what's next in life and all things. But the show goes on. So always love talking to my buddy Dylan here, and any and all who tune in to check out what we have to say. And more importantly, when we have great guests on, like tonight. So we're looking for a conversation later on with Manny Escamilla, Commissioner, Sir
Extraordinaire,
Sir Escamilla,
the People's Archivist.
The People's Archivist, yes, truly.
Sure.
So yeah, it'll be a good combo then. But let's go ahead and jump into our top stories, shall we?
Top stories.
Oh, is it quick stories?
Quick stories. Headlines.
Headlines, something or the other.
Nicest stories of the day. We're gonna rename it Nicest Stories of the Day. Well, this ain't that nice. Texas. What the hell is going on over there? Well, you've probably heard already. There's a giant like snowstorm, a giant let's say weather anomaly, perhaps relating to climate change. Though in the past decade there have been kind of blizzards and things like that, but I guess not to this extent. This caused like a huge demand for heating and a stressed out, very unique Texan power grid that was the the brainchild of deregulation, conservative deregulation and stuff like that, right? So apparently a lot of also pipes burst because say in homes that couldn't be kept heated, or like pipes may have burst because of the freezing. Like there wasn't the kinds of precautions on a lot of the infrastructure that maybe could have been done proactively, or maybe could have been prevented by heating and stuff like that. So a lot of damage on that end. And yeah, I guess the public's footing the bill for it. But
yeah, no, it's truly a tragic situation. A lot of, there were some deaths due to the cold. Like thousands of people, were just really facing the elements without help from their, the people that they entrusted to be able to handle these kinds of situations. I mean, these are unprecedented temperatures and weather patterns that Texas is not used to. So, but even still, instead of being able to, figure out that this problem of not being part of, the national, energy sharing, as every other state except Texas does, then it put them in a precarious situation because they want to not face regulations, and so then they can't easily borrow energy from other states. So then they were trapped with a situation that was completely unmanageable, and it could have been a lot worse. And from from reports from folks there, it seemed like they were very, very close to for it to be a lot worse than it turned out. And so several things came out, but one, of course, was the hashtag Cancun cruise, hashtag Carnival cruise.
Ouch.
Yeah, all that, Ted Cruz, of course, decided to, in the middle of emergency, go to Cancun and then throw his daughters under the bus. It's like, well, my daughters, wanted to go to somewhere warm, and what am I gonna do? Yeah, okay, blame your daughters. Like, what a scoundrel, what a coward,
Dirty dude.
Yeah, but then also the scoundrels of the GOP that were blaming the Green New Deal and everybody except themselves, because the wind turbines, were shut down because of it. But green energy only makes up less than a quarter of the total energy, and it actually performed better than they thought it would compared to the coal and other types of energies that completely failed them. But like, just leave it to the Republicans to always blame. When in doubt, blame AOC and the Green New Deal
Yeah.
for any
Apparently.
problems that you, a Republican state governor, Republican Congress, Republican Attorney General, Republican senators, made yourselves.
Yeah, I mean, the crisis was a result of their policies of like deregulation. But yeah, it is interesting also that AOC did go down there afterward. I mean, I think that's a good thing as a a good gesture, as a national political figure, to be attending to these emergencies. And, I mean, it is kind of like, it's not exactly the same, but I mean, obviously Flint, Michigan, like the water crisis over there was far worse than this. But I mean, this is also a similar situation where like our institutions are failing us, and like, and this one in particular, yeah, I mean, it's more like the government decided to deregulate it, and then they made all these interesting decisions, like not being part of one of the national grids, not having these regulations to like do winter preparation, or so they might have had some benefits, like some lower rates or something, but maybe they didn't do the preventative measures that regulation imposes on industries just to have some fair benchmark, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, interesting case study here. But we have to watch our institutions too. Like, doesn't matter who's running it. Like, if the public isn't engaged in it, like they'll run it however they want and tell you you're getting a good deal.
Yeah. Well, all I know is that those energy companies in Texas made a buttload of money because, of course, they gouged the prices in the middle of an emergency to try to squeeze as much money out of people that were already struggling during a pandemic, and now faced icicles in their freaking ceiling fans. This is nuts.
Yeah, that's crazy, dude.
Yeah, but
yeah, of course they charge you.
Kudos to AOC for doing more than Ted Cruz did for his own damn state. So that was great. That she can just flex her power and raise all sorts of money to help those people need. So
it's like 5 million or exceeding that now.
Yeah, no, it's really, really great. So yeah, our thoughts are with those folks in Texas, but I know that things are getting better now, and so continuing to try to not screw things up when it comes to electricity, which is why we need the Green New Deal and so many other things, so that we're better prepared, and also some serious regulation. But the Lone Star states, they're gonna Texas going Texas.
Yeah,
exactly. They are the Lone Star state, right?
I believe that is the case. That is the case. All right. And they proved it here with their energy system. It works independently on its own, and it's the star of this story.
There we go. All right, I was waiting for some plan.
Hey-oh. Yeah, like, where is this going, Dylan? Please. Don't do this. Yes, next top story. Starring Jose.
That's me. I'm gonna get you, little bastards. U.S. Supreme Court formally pulls the plug on election related cases. So this was not a surprise. It went in line with what already, the stance of the Supreme Court, and even Trump appointees on the Supreme Court were saying that they were, going to side against the president who appointed them. He was not expecting that one. Surprise, surprise. So according to Reuters, the U.S. Supreme Court on Monday brought a formal end to 8 lingering disputes pursued by former President Donald Trump and his allies related to the November 3rd presidential election, including a Republican challenge to the extension of Pennsylvania's deadline to receive mail-in ballots. So, 3 of the 9 members of the court's 6 conservative judges justices Clarence Thomas, Samuel Alito, and Neil Gorsuch dissented from the decision not to hear the Pennsylvania case. So, yeah, he's out of office, and Trump just keeps. He got really tired of winning, so then he just started losing a lot, in the courts and at the ballot boxes. But of course, he continues to claim that it was rigged, it was stolen from him, and none of this matters to him and his supporters, because now the new date is March 4th. Have you heard about this? March 4th.
What's that?
That's the day that QAnon conspiracy theorists say that Trump is going to take back office because, according to them, all the presidents since Ulysses S. Grant have been illegitimate presidents.
That makes sense.
And yeah, he was a commander-in-chief that was sworn into office on March 4th. So therefore, Trump will become the 19th president, a legitimate president on March 4th. And so they're going to have to keep about 6,000 troops of National Guard troops in Washington up until that date, because they are expecting all these knuckleheads and monkey brains to descend upon Washington and expect for Haley's comment in the form of the orange ball of fury that is Trump to come down and rescue us from the lizard people and and all of these things that the Democrats are.
Well, I'm glad you said that because it finally makes sense. Because that was the last piece. Like QAnon didn't make sense until you explained that part. But yeah, I get it now.
Yeah, but in the end, the Supreme Court is just putting a nail in the coffin of the legislative attempt by Trump and his allies and the Republicans in Pennsylvania and other states to overturn the will of the people. So, hooray, democracy, or something close to it, lives yet again.
Yes. Borderline. Well, a less oppressive oligarchy. Okay. Woo! Speaking of less oppression, California okays $600 stimulus payments for 5.7 million people.
Woo!
Yeah, give me that money. Woo! Well, who is this targeting? They're trying to target people that kind of were left out of the federal stimulus, including undocumented immigrants and let's see, differently abled people and people of the medium to low incomes and stuff. So, I mean, I'll say this: this is what they had to do. I feel like that this has to be paired with. If you're going to shut down people's businesses, you have to do things like this. And this, whatever they passed here, also provided some support for small businesses. Like they should have done this way earlier, in my opinion, right? This should have gone hand in hand. Pay people to stay home. Pay people so that their small businesses survive through this thing. And once we're out of it, we can keep going. As you know what I'm saying? But maybe I won't say too little, too late. But maybe more of this is in order. But
to me, it's like the cynical side of me, which is quickly becoming all of me. It feels that this is an attempt by Gavin Newsom to fight back against the recall efforts that are gaining steam from all sides. You would think it would just be Republicans, but many Democrats are also not happy with him, or maybe not Democrats, left-leaning independents, whatnot. But it's not just Republicans, and so this helps hopefully. but you're right. It should have come way sooner for people. We're already like about a year into this, right?
Yeah.
And we're just
$600
in getting to this. So these people that were left out of the federal government stimulus could have used this some time ago. And for some people that were kicked out of their homes or, were not able to pay some of these bills, they are very much, going to struggle with that. and going to continue to. So, but hey, give me that money.
Yeah.
Need them greenbacks, son.
Is that wait, are they like throwing shade a bit with the 600 figure? Because it's kind of like the feds gave you a 1400, you know? So they're like, well, this would get you to 2000. I don't know if there's any indirect shade intended there.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
for some reason, 600. Well, California can afford it, right? I mean, they're a world-class economy, the state, right? So.
Yeah. Well, with $600, people can pay a third of their 1-bedroom apartment rent. So, hooray for that.
Well, that'll get them through the next year. Oh God.
Well, but then you can always move to Texas if it's gets too expensive in California.
No,
but now I see my California friends that moved to Texas. All bundled up inside.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Didn't see that coming.
Yeah, the grass is always greener on
top of everything, like then it was the murder hornets, and now it's these blizzards in the desert. Okay.
Yeah, man.
All right.
Well, moving on to our last top story. Story to our awesome guests here tonight. Craft fair with thousands in downtown Santa Ana prompts new questions over city officials' outdoor business policies.
What?
No, this is an old story, but we've been around. So
yeah,
just from February 9th. So Santa Ana, this is from the Voice of OC, friends of the show, Voice of OC. Santa Ana officials are facing questions over how they allowed an outdoor flea market with apparently large crowds to happen downtown that weekend in a predominantly Latino city that has been especially ravaged by the coronavirus pandemic. So officials say that the event was technically permitted under a special local emergency order they issued last year. I believe the city manager did so, which allows outdoor businesses to operate on sidewalks and parking spots while being mindful of COVID-19 safety measures. Now some wonder whether tweaks to that policy are necessary. So Councilman Jonathan Hernandez said that something about the order needs to change. Councilmember Lopez and I talked about it and we're on the same page, he said. So so there was videos, there was pictures of the beer being served and people being like, I drove by the damn thing. I was like, oh man, it's popping downtown. Yeah. It felt like Noche de Altares type of thing, it was just entirely way too many people clamped together.
So like 600?
Yeah.
It's like in the 100 scale, I think.
Yeah. Outdoor gatherings are deemed relatively safe, or safer than indoor gatherings, when taking precautions, but to a point, but larger outdoor gatherings is a higher risk, and especially at night. During the day, I believe the scientists say that the virus, is killed by the sunshine, by sunlight, rather quickly. But at night, it could just float up there. Different people spoke up. Delilah Snell, owner of the Alta Baja Market in downtown, said, "We're in a pandemic. I believe in small businesses, and I know that they're hurting, but there's no reason to hold events like this right now." So she also said the city of Santa Ana is being hit so hard by COVID-19, and for them to allow something like this is so disappointing. Makes this whole community look horrible, careless. It's just really sad. Now is not the time. So reached for comment on the city spokesperson Paul Eakin said nobody in the city issued a permit for the event, but the city does allow for outdoor retail and dining under the city manager's order. So now they're looking into whether they're going to tweak or change that order. It's a conversation that needs to happen with staff, Councilwoman Jessie Lopez said. This is not a good look at all. And Mayor Vicente Sarmiento said the direction should be to support local businesses to continue to provide a service and generate revenue while not trying to promote an event that's going to draw unnecessary large crowds that will endanger people's public health. So, Oh, and Councilwoman Tai Viet Phan said, we as a city have been trying really hard to tell people to avoid crowds. And she said she didn't know much about the event and only saw photos of the crowds on social media.
Suspicious.
Wait. That's Katie.
Wait, what?
Oh, man.
Wait, who organized? Does this article say who organized the event?
No, it was the Patches and Pins, right? They've been doing events for some time now in the downtown
Yeah, but did they just do it unprovoked or like so? No, they didn't require a permit. They're saying no one in the city issued a permit for that event. Is what they said. Seems suspicious. But,
we'll talk to to our guest next, and we can talk. We get all the ins and outs of it. I believe that they had some sort of permit, but also that there was standing permits for businesses to do things, but it just got out of hand.
got blurred, maybe.
Understand. So, but yeah, I mean, and things happen, mistakes happen, but can you address them and accountability and all these things and governing is hard, but yeah, we have to be better. And so somebody that knows a little bit about making things better, tweaking policies and just everything inside and outside of Santana is our good friend of the show, Commissioner Sir Manny Escamilla. Welcome to the show, Full Metal Archivist. Woo!
Yeah.
Well, thanks for having me on again. Yeah, like I don't know that you have the powers of the Queen to knight somebody.
I was gonna say, are you a knight?
I am not, and I don't want the Her Majesty's Secret Service to come after me for not actually being a true sir, knighted.
You're a knight of the people.
Yes,
sense.
Exactly. Yeah, you're my knight in shining armor, Manny. Yes, Sir Manny of House of Escamilla. Very good to have you on, good sir. So, the last time I saw you was in an Art and Culture Commission meeting, because you are an Art and Culture Commissioner, at least for the time being, and so am I. For the time
What?
Yeah, we're commissioners together, which is pretty fun.
I think we call each other colleagues, right?
Right.
Manny, he is my colleague. Colleague.
I see how this commissioner's stuff works. I see how it works.
We're all insiders now.
Yeah.
But Dylan, you shouldn't say anything either, because I think I'm giving you a tour, so you've actually hired me for.
Oh man, might follow the money.
Follow the money, right?
Follow the money. Yeah, that's true.
Right, but right, but it was for a good cause, right? So if Dylan, what did you give your charity money to?
A wonderful, beautiful organization that I can't remember the name of at the moment. Maybe you can bail me out, Manny.
No, this is. I'm gonna let this hang over you until it comes back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, so still commissioner here for the time being. I am a leftover appointment from the Ward 6 area when Sacramento was there. I'm still as a Ward 6 council member. So right now, technically, I guess I'm under Ty Fan's slot. So whenever she appoints a commissioner, I am out.
And why are you out, sir?
So
out with it.
So the big news and the reason my room's like a little bit more disorganized than usual is I am leaving for Oakland. So I have accepted a position in Oakland's planning department. So I will be a planner for the city of Oakland. And it's a fundamental belief, even though I guess the job is mostly going to be remote, at least for the time being with COVID. So I won't necessarily even have to go into the office. That planners should plan in the cities that they live, or at least be very deeply rooted in their communities. So that's part of the job is being there, understanding kind of how the cityscape is evolving, and really having eyes on the ground as you plan out what the city's going to look like.
Well, it's bittersweet, man. I'll say that.
Yeah.
And but yeah, man, I do wonder though. You'll have to sell off all your Santa Ana art collection, right?
Oh no! Like I actually, so the great thing about this is we built a little storage shed, which is supposed to be like I was building a library basically, right? And like stacking everything and like making it all nice. And I was like, oh, this is where everything's gonna go, so I can have a little like retreat. And now it's just turned into a storage shed. So we just packed everything together, and I started wrapping up a lot of my artwork. So the stuff on the walls is, the stuff that's still on the walls. But the other good thing is I'm literally just going room by room and just like adding my like paintings to like my parents' room. My sister gets a painting. I'm like, all right, this one goes in the hallway.
Yeah.
So it's just yeah.
So your job title in Oakland will be?
I'll be a planner too, so it's the equivalent of an associate planner over here.
Okay, so is that a different position than what you were when you were here? A better one?
Yeah, it's a better position. It's like 2 steps better than what I was doing over here.
Better paid?
Oh yeah, no, totally. I am like I'm not quite 1%, but I'm definitely like it's getting
You're
on its way.
Damn, you're jumping the tax bracket?
Yeah.
Dude, like I have to like do as much as I can. So I always recommend to everybody invest in your individual retirement account. And if you're a city or municipal government or some kind of a government employee, to contribute the most you can to your 457 plan, which is your deferred compensation. So if I do all that, I won't necessarily jump too many brackets, but it will be a jump. So I need to like stash away stuff for retirement instead.
Damn.
We need to do another show just on the financial planning.
Financial, planning services by Manny Escamilla, one of many talents. Damn it.
Well, yeah, because like I don't know if I've ever told you guys, I'm like I'm a believer in like the FIRE movement, right? So financial independence, retire early, just like do as much as you can, like upfront savings, and try to live off of that for the rest of your life. And you can kind of do it if you like also don't have a very high, consumption rate. So you're basically not consuming that much in the sense of like having fancy vacations, super nice cars, or like living in the biggest house you can't possibly afford. So if you kind of like control for all that over time, you can live pretty decently. And it's kind of what's allowed me to float around for the last year as I try to figured out what I was going to do.
Damn,
There you go, man.
I'm like almost there, except for the fancy vacations. I can't give those up, man. Like no, like
No, but sometimes it's cheaper to like go somewhere for a month than it is to go somewhere for a week, right? So like if you plan everything for a month, you have to take an you have to fly, you have like restricted days in which you can go. You're only doing like weekend rates, and then like you're trying to cram all this stuff in this very short time frame. But if you go for a month, you could like find like a sublease. It's like $600 for like a temporary sublease on a small little condo, small little room, something. You take a bus over there and you're like, yeah, cool. Like just take my time. And, you got really cheap rate if it's overseas, and so it's different things you can do if you travel slow.
That's right. Yeah. Like before we get into the heavy stuff, you brought up the travel. I just went to Sedona, and when I was there, I was like, I thought of you because I remember when you were, how do I put this lightly? Heartbroken. Completely like devastated. When after the election that you narrowly lost, I believe you went there. Is that correct?
No, I went there to celebrate the victory of all the progressives, like in this last 2020 cycle. It was the exact opposite. I was very happy. I was like, I did my piece. Ooh. Like like the universe is like tilting, one way or another, and I did the best I could to like nudge my little body against the weight of the universe in one particular direction.
Dude, did you feel the vortex?
I heard about the vortexes. I didn't feel them. I felt that the vortexes were being sold to me, quite honestly. Like,
yeah.
Hey, you want to buy this jar? It's got the vortex in it. You see?
Yeah, you really feel the spiritual power and the energy. I'm like, this feels like I'm being sold something. I'm gonna just enjoy the natural beauty.
No, it definitely felt like, because when you go to Mexico City and you go to the pyramids, they always tell you to wear white and like stand up top and like hold your hands up because you'll get all like that good juju. But no, dude, I actually felt it. Like I really did, and I wasn't even trying to like feel. Well, I was, but it wasn't like a self-induced kind of thing. It was very much like, oh my god, I'm getting tingly. This is like there's like some electromagnetic energy, perhaps, to not call it spiritual energy, but maybe a little bit of both.
That's
could
cool.
be ghosts.
Yeah, maybe you're just more force sensitive than I am. So I don't feel anything.
The force is strong with me, Manny. Yes, it is. The force is strong with you. All right.
But I did want to, like, if we're talking about Sedona, there was something that I thought was like a tragic, kind of more related to planning and the way that you develop a city and the community. So it is very much an area that people go for its natural beauty, has a wonderful tourist economy. But it's another example of what we do in the United States, where we basically spread everything out so much that it actually ends up ruining what we love so much about it. So if you look at a lot of old photos for Sedona, you basically have these like large valleys where it would have been complete natural landscaping, right? So it was just like, just forest like on the floor. But even those areas are basically being encroached on by like $1 million subdivisions where we have like 1.2, 1.3, $2-3 million homes being placed further and further across the valley floor, so you can actually see this pursuit of natural beauty basically destroying the place that you love. And there was very little in the way of allowances for like multifamily, anything that's a little bit more walkable, even if like going from one location to another. There wasn't like a bus service you'd like really go. I'm sure there was, but like I didn't see one when I was there. Like, and then just like everything was only like a single story with like lots of parking in front of it, but you didn't really see that many apartments. And so things that would actually like reduce the overall like environmental impact, it doesn't seem to be kind of part of the plan for Sedona. And one of these places that you expect to, for its very survival, preserve its natural beauty, and it's having the most minimal possible impact on the land itself, totally out the window. But maybe that's just like Arizona planning. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I did see that, and like it's a place where if you're rich enough to buy that land, then they will probably let you. There must be some sort of like limitations of where they're but for the most part, like it's
it's like right, and it's pretty much strictly like the federal like land and the state like parkland, and then everything else is like fair game. So it's like, oh, this is crazy to me.
Yeah, but it was still beautiful. So anyways, I thought
do any golfing out there?
I have been working on my swing, so I really don't golf. Like golfing's like one of the things I don't hate golfing, but I do think it's a waste of space.
I can picture the fancy golf courses in the desert out there.
Yeah, the only golf course I like is a miniature golf course off of the 91 freeway going to Riverside.
Yeah, I think we should replace our mini golf courses here in like central Orange County, and give them turn over large golf courses into tiny little mini golf courses, and then the rest is regular parks so that people can enjoy them.
Amen to that. All right, so Manny, I personally I was just shocked and saddened when I heard this news of you leaving, because you're just such an asset in so many ways. You're a local historian, an art collector, a freaking
financial planner.
Financial planner.
I think it sounded by the likes of it a novice travel agent, even.
No, it comes from my philosophy of life, right? Like, so, like, one of the only things I really remember from my undergraduate years is like having to read like Hinds for Siraj by Gandhi. I want to say that that's the name of the book, but it basically like the main thing was like, don't be consumed by your own desires and your basic tendency to want, and like if you can take care of that, you're probably going to be okay. It's like, just don't always want more all the time, because that's like a basic human drive. So if you can try to control that, you might be okay. And that's really the only thing I learned that kind of then applies to the financial planning side, where I'm like, look, get a couple of dollars saved away. It's enough to live off of. And I'd rather just have the freedom to say, F you, I'm doing what I want. I don't need you. And then that's way more important to me than having a lot.
Amen.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Minimalist and all these good things.
Right.
So,
I'm definitely not a minimalist, though. Like, it's like everything is like good.
Well, minimalism is in the sense that fancy car, nice house. Like I look in Santana and there's you're in the hood and you see really nice cars. It's like, well, maybe you could move out of the hood if you didn't spend $600 on payments on those cars, plus $300 on insurance, plus $200 on gas, and right now more because it's freaking crazy expensive. Yeah, oh my god! So you're spending like $1,200 on your car. That's really fancy stuff. Like, move out of your damn mom's house, to put those $1,200, get another $500, and maybe get into a mortgage or something.
Yeah, and so in that vein and that spirit, if anyone wants a used Yaris with 85,000 miles on it, try to get rid of that sucker now too.
And a car salesman.
God damn it!
No, I can't. I can't even lie. Like, it needs body work. Like the whole thing. Like it's a Yaris. It hits everything. Like you get a little tiny bump and it just bam.
You're honest. When can I get a test drive?
Probably during the tour. If we want to do the tour via vehicle, we can do that. I don't know if we still wanted to do the tour virtually.
Make it happen.
Oh, you talk about your bromance off the air, okay?
God damn
Getting
it.
jealous, but anyways. Dude, Manny. So so we were talking about this patches and pins thing. So what happened here? Like, can you tell us exactly who messed up?
I wish I could. Like, I think this is one of those things where like I haven't seen the initial kind of like chain of events to kind of be more informed than the average person. Other than what it appears to be the result of is the city went for a very laissez-faire kind of approach to permitting in the downtown, basically saying like, okay, you don't really have a permitting process anymore. You just are allowed to have events on the public sidewalk, kind of like everywhere, like in front of businesses. So what had traditionally been happening, or what the traditional process is, a particular like let's say organization, foundation, group of vendors, like whatever it ends up being, they usually have to get permits in order to have anything either on the public right of way or to have something occur on a private space that isn't the typical use. So you're basically getting a permit to use your own property in a different way for a special event, or you're getting a permit from the city to use public sidewalk space or a parking lot, or something that's owned and needs like additional approvals from the city. The city's basically stopped approving anything on public property, right? Like there is no, that's why there's no art walk, because that typically runs through a permitting process in order to use the promenade. So then that's basically on pause. But something like the Hampton Night Market is able to partner with the businesses to then put a little kind of stand in front of those businesses, pretty much, and kind of spread that all throughout the downtown. So then that's cool. But what happened here, it appears that, yeah, we kind of basically took that to the extreme of, well, we're going to put a bunch of these stands in front of businesses, but it's going to be highly concentrated in like one area. So, the thing that this is probably more the result of is that there was no kind of fail-safe mechanism by which we could say like, hey, no, this is now too crowded and it has to sort of disperse. There was no kind of no chain of authority there in order to kind of get that spread out and to at least be more like COVID safe or compliant. I think it could have been done in a different way, and it might have involved like shutting down some streets or at least spreading out the booths to different sidewalks, or to different, just kind of spreading it out instead of concentrating, the event. But all that would have required the city to then really have these other rules established, which doesn't at present. So right now it's basically still all those rules and orders that essentially allowed it to happen are still kind of in place. And now the city is really just kind of cracked down on like, okay, well now no other events. I think it was, I'm not sure if it was the Funk Freaks, and then also at the night market that now have been canceled.
The pins and patches was supposed to be going on this past weekend, I believe, but they didn't.
Yeah, so it led to a bunch of cancellations. So that is basically working with about 2 or 3 people at the city administration. So it's like the downtown liaison, potentially some folks from like public works, and then kind of like fire and PD for safety, which is usually kind of where you go through. So like you were part of that is for maybe a long time, and you would basically submit a set of plans saying this is where we're going to do the event. This is how much street space we're going to need. This is going to where vendors are going to go. Here's where the access is going. And in this particular case, none of that again is needed because there is no permitting process. It's all just by right in front of businesses, as long as that business allows you to be there in front of them. But yeah, there was no one to basically say like, okay, now we're calling this off because there's no permit, because there was no permit needed to be able to do it. So it is very circular, very catch-22, and eventually you just have to have someone say like, look, I'm taking responsibility for this. It's not going to happen again. Here's our new set of rules. 36 square feet or whatever. Let's see, whatever. And someone can do some math for me instead. The area of a circle, 6 feet around a person, then times the expected number of people that you have. Yeah, and then you're like, roughly, this is the amount of space that you need for the people. And exactly. But draw a little diagram with that. So that could be one way to restrict it, or you just have someone out there saying like, no, we're cutting this, or like. But
there is nobody there, right? The police is really not, like doing much as far as like, like cracking down on things. The sheriffs are not. So it's really like a wild west, for the most part down there. And like I'm conflicted because on the one hand, I'm like, oh, shame those people, like shame, like why do you open your business? But on the other hand, it's like if these businesses don't open up to the degree like they're going to go under, especially when they didn't get the stimulus package fast enough as they wanted to. So literally we could be losing like more businesses than we already have lost.
Yeah, and a lot of the folks that were here, they're basically small vendors that are what is it? These small specialty vendors that make their money off of pop-ups, and having a year that you haven't had pop-ups, and these will on average more likely than not have filed like formal taxes, business records, anything that would have qualified them for the paycheck protection loans, or anything that would have been kind of part of the normal like business routine for a lot of the funding that's been given out. They would not have gotten any of this. So even if it's just a side hustle, it's still kind of missing that entire bit of income. And the other thing is also kind of psychological, right? Like, we've dragged this thing on for a year where we haven't just had a hard stop, and it's been so like, can we not? Half of us stay in, but then half of us go out, and then that half actually probably varies over time depending on one's own personal circumstances and how real the kind of pandemic is at any one particular moment, and also how real the economic crisis is for people. So it's hard to just lay blame. It's just that if we're going to have these types of things, we just need to have processes and procedures in place so that if there are issues that arise, that they can be dealt with in a timely manner, and it's not just kind of the next day when it becomes an issue.
Yeah, it kind of seemed like maybe it was really hard to do a lot of these things in the past, and then COVID happened, and then the city's like, okay, just anything to make you guys survive. Just you guys can just do anything outside of your businesses, but not having that nuance, right? Like, because think like, how would you actually control this? Like, wouldn't you have to block the streets to control the number of people that could be in a particular area? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's like for like, do you have like a dispersal order, right? Like, so they're like, all right, do you want police out there telling people to disperse?
Yeah,
and like,
it's weird because it's just the downtown, right? So it's like, imagine like there was no event, right? There was no patches and pins, but all the businesses just did a fantastic job marketing, and they attracted 1,000 people to the downtown.
Yeah,
like it's not like there's cops out there saying, "Hey, get out of here!" Like, I mean. How are you supposed to
opposite.
Yeah. So, but I mean, that's not really what's happening. I mean, obviously an event to attract a big crowd is different, and maybe we can just regulate that. But it is a curious question. Like, what are we supposed to do even if, a lot of people just happen to want to go downtown?
Right. I also wonder like that in juxtaposition to like marches or protests, right? From left or right. I think those are trying to bring. So it's like that's freedom of speech, so that's okay, but freedom of business not okay. Like you know what I mean? Like there's like societally there's things that we're okay with and things that we're not okay with, and I think that that's part of like what's so confusing and why people are so mad at Gavin Newsom and local governments, because it's just. They think that they know better, but they really don't. Like we know for a fact that like having stuff indoors, bad, right? Like a lot of people cramped, bad. But out, once you like outside, like how bad is it? And how much are you going to like be like, well, if people are risking themselves to do this, like how much is it the government's responsibility versus the people's responsibility, right? Like we're always saying like, like individual, well, I don't know. Some people will be like, well, we know we need individual responsibility, right? Libertarians, perhaps. And other people was like, no, we need daddy, government to, spank us and put us in our place and, give us a timeout, Yeah,
I see. Okay, as someone that's worked in government, I'd like to see government as a partner, as someone that we work with, as someone that has a vested interest in your interest as well. But I know that's not always the case. That's what I'd like to see.
Ideally.
Yeah. No, but it does go down to like how much you can regulate what a person does or does not do. And then also, especially if we still continue to allow gatherings that are relatively intense, right? Because it's not just that there's 5,000 people; it's like 5,000 people spread around and like observing like socially distant behavior with masks and hand sanitizer. Relatively low risk event. You cram in 20 people into one small area, and they're huddled all together in like an area where there's no one else around them, but they're all huddled together without masks. That's also an issue, right? And it's tough. It just ends up being the particulars of what's happening at any one moment, and until we're really kind of have everything under control and vaccines are rolled out and we're dealing with all the new variants that come out, life is it's going to be hard for life still to return to any form of normalcy. And all we can probably ask and really kind of still mandate is the wearing of enough masks. So if we can't all get in 95s, double masking, hand sanitizer, you're observing a certain amount of like space within an area. I think the gambling rules are pretty good. So like in Vegas, I think what they're implementing is that even at craps tables, yeah, you can only have 4 people like at a table at any one particular time. So you're able to at least put them on 4 sides of a table. So in something like this, it's like, hey, you have outdoor events, 4 people per booth if you're in a small booth, or one family if they all come together. There are other like little nuances there, but it ends up being way more complicated than just saying like no event, yes event. And which is usually I think what people want to hear. It's like, can I do this or can I not? Like, if I'm going to do this, I want to do this all the way. It's like, well, let's minimize the risk. I'm very much a person that believes in harm reduction. So when it comes to like my policy and stances as far as drug treatment, whether or not I believe that people will pretty much consume whatever they want to consume. Like if it's something that they want to do, that they will do it. So that it's our kind of role and responsibility to make sure that the person is adequately hydrated, that there are adequate medical facilities around, that there is opportunity for let's say access to is it Narcan that ends up kind of stopping heroin overdoses. So things like that where you can reduce the harm of actions that are questionable societally and have outside cost. That's generally the approach that we can do, right? So if we just had, the best thing would have been like a person handing out masks and like hand sanitizers and asking everyone, hey, please, we have the highest rates. We have thousands of people dying. I think, my own family, I think we lost 2 people in this last spike. So that was, intense. So it's very real. And, I think getting to people on that level rather than just saying like, we're limiting your freedom, talking about your choices do have an impact, even if you don't see it, on the lives of others. And we've lost so many, like really kind of bringing in like that part of it. Because I think part of the visceral reaction that we had is that there's a lot of anger because so much of us have already lost so many people in like a year of our lives. So that's why there's a lot of anger around this issue. But if we take a step back, try to breathe and see how we can kind of communicate that in something that's maybe a little less of an attack and more of kind of trying to create a bridge with people that are attending these events, which typically young male, right? Young and male, young and dumb, because that's what you are at that age. Like that's fine. Like I worked with teenagers. I was once a teenager and I was stupid, and that was fine. It's like it's part of your developmental like cycle. So that's kind of the approach that I like to see in these sorts of situations, but it's tough and it requires much more of a one-on-one, and it's hard to just kind of have these predefined sets of rules which we all like. So yeah, it becomes very, very complicated. I'm sorry, I don't have a clear answer for you, but
yeah, that was a great non-answer, Manny. I like that. Incredible. Just kidding. No, I think you bring up, just the nuance around it is very important. It's a controversial issue. We've never gone through this before, so it's just one of those things where like people are trying to manage it as best they can. But the fact of the matter is, like, if it wasn't in downtown Santana, it'd be like in the houses, or in like these secret, like parties that are that the kids are getting into. Because like you said, we were kids. Like we don't think we're gonna die when you're a kid. Like you climb roofs and like climb trees and like put crazy stuff into your system, take random drugs, like you don't even know what the hell is in there because it's like screw it,
yeah,
but
it's like I don't need to test this. It's like they took it, they're fine.
Exactly. Yeah, but hey, let's I want to get your thoughts on the council. So man, as you said, you didn't go to Sedona because you were sad. You went there because you were happy because we had all these people, including Jesse Lopez in particular, specifically, and Sarmiento, and folks are appraising the millennial kind of wave that took over the council. So I don't know if you saw my long rant before I left Facebook about identity politics, but it and it taketh away. Yeah, you didn't need to. It was.
Well, I actually don't try to. I try to spend less and less time on Facebook. I think I've set my timer so like I don't spend more than an hour like Facebook, Instagram combined.
Nice.
It sucks when I hit it and I'm like, oh damn, I failed today. But because then I still want to log back in. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna log back in just really quick.
Get a self-parent.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like giving yourself screen time.
We all should. And then what you can also do is like turn off the color on your screen so that it's less bright and attractive. So that you're like, no, I'm going to stop staring at this grayscale and I'm going to go back to real, wonderful, full color life. Yeah. Yeah.
Damn, that is a life hack for the win. Yeah, man. So, well, we have a younger, diverse group of council members. So what are we looking at? Like, is it looking good? Is it looking questionable? Are we still, like in a challenging place? What is the stronghold that Pulido had on the council? Is it still there? Is it not there? Is it like in the shadows? The spirit haunts the halls.
It's like it stalks the halls.
I may or may not have heard that he was still trying to attend meetings and go to council meetings or go to the city hall, like as if he was like, still owned the place. And he had to be told like, hey, Pulido, you can't come in here because you don't go here anymore. He doesn't even go here.
Yeah, it's like,
like, you are a regular citizen. You need to check in down there, mother sucker.
that is a hell of a transition. So I did it just as an employee, and I'm like, oh man, I got to check in now. I could have just like walk up, and I was like, and I kind of know like how to just get into the building without it. Like it's not like that hard, but yeah.
Yeah.
Another way.
Anyway, so to the question, does Pulido's spirit still haunted? Are the politics different? What gives?
Well, like the way that I see it, it's like I worry less about Pulido. Like I will always say this, right? I think he was a masterful politician. He really played particular generation and a center voting bloc that managed to carry him to pretty much except for a single primary election, undefeated. Like, right, he has like one of the best like political like records like here locally. He just managed to dominate pretty much every single race he was in except for
like
one.
30 plus years, right?
Yeah. So
as a member.
Right, and he was always very well spoken, very like cordial when you met him one on one. So with all that being said, I worry more about the legacies of some of his projects rather than about him as a person, right? Like, my big concern is, whether or not Pulido is still with us. Well, I would say look at the empty lots on Bristol, right? And the coming demolitions of, additional homes kind of now going a little bit more north of 17th. And the removal of that entire area, like that to me is more of like, okay, what remains from Pulido? So if Pulido is still here, it's really, okay, what were the policies, procedures, and actual like projects that either remain or were encoded into the very structure of power and the very structure of governance here? That is what I'm looking to kind of figure out what needs to be dismantled, what can we like move in a different direction. Part of that had been addressed with the formation of term limits, both for the mayor and the council, ward-based elections, pretty good. We had the defeat of the basically, how do I say this? Of a particular set of priorities based strictly on preferences from the Police Officers Association of a particular generation, because I think that the new POA under Jerry Serrano was very different than what the POA used to be under all of its previous leaders, and was kind of another labor negotiator, and definitely had influence in City Hall, but not to the extent that it did recently. And whether or not that system of power is still in place, I think that that Jerry's still a powerful guy in the sense that he has influence, and we're talking about him rather than talking about something else. So there's still that kind of needs to be dealt with. There's also the kind of funding and the mechanisms by which we do development in towns. So like, how do things get built? Why are those rules and regulations so opaque? And why is it that only certain people are able to navigate those systems? It's one of those things where I always like to tell people that if you make something very difficult and you make it very exclusive, you're basically having a lot of discretionary power by the city council members themselves, it's basically an invitation for corruption. You know,
why does Mike Hara got all the deals while he's sitting on one Broadway for freaking 2 decades? You know, like build that crap first.
Wait, what are you talking about? That's the largest dirt pile in Orange County, sir.
Yeah, it is. It's turned almost into a natural hill now at this point.
Yeah, I believe it has a well-developed root system that keeps the dirt pile of this particular shape.
It probably has endangered species on it at this point. So yes, we might be able to protect the hill or the mound.
Protect the mound.
Yeah, save the mound.
They could do like Custer's Last Stand reenactions there. Man.
Yeah. So things like that where it becomes like, let's find a way for the city to only do one exclusive negotiation agreement with one agency at a time, or only having one of those active at a time, would be a step in the right direction. So, you know, something like that I think would make sense. You know, additional kind of campaign finance reform. You know, if we want to be as strict as possible when it comes to that sort of thing, where money comes from, how transparent it is. And I think we do a pretty good job of transparency if you're really looking at it. You know, so there are things like that I think that immediately come to mind as far as what legacy projects kind of need to be worked on in order to have you know, a different set of governing priorities. But there is kind of, I think, still this missing, you know, vision for what St. Anne is to be. And there is
the trolley part of his legacy?
Yeah, the trolley is definitely part of his legacy for sure. That is like one of his big projects, and I think you know, don't hate me for this, but you know, my honest assessment of it is that it's really bad in the short term. It'll be pretty good in the long term.
I hate you.
And we're uncertain as to what the middle kind of range is going to be, right? So like, I think that that's like a fair enough assessment of the situation. The best way, again, for me, right, I would have gone like BRT all the way. So bus rapid transit system would have been like a tenth the cost. It would have been operating already. We would have been able to do it with like off the shelf technology. We could have like probably sourced some of that stuff like directly here in Orange County without too much of an issue. And it would have been much more modular and flexible. So yeah, all this stuff that I really do believe like in that, you know, in that as the option. But at the same time, you know, once it gets built, the County of Los Angeles is basically building out the rail system to go out to Artesia. So we're only going to have like a few mile gap between the rail line in Artesia to then like the Santa Ana terminus there at Garden Grove. So it's figuring out that last little connection. You know, another route to John Wayne Airport and the university kind of through the Irvine Business corridor is actually kind of one of the best like areas where you can get the most amount of people to move to where a lot of the jobs are. So eventually that route will make sense. But, you know, this first leg was done in such a way so as to not really deal with any of the impacts to the immediate neighbors, right? Like it was basically done like, hey, we're going to do this for this long-term vision without really taking care of those folks that were immediately impacted. And that is kind of the type of mentality that I think will need to be changed over time. It's like, how do you actually make it so that people do win that are going to be part of this change? And it's not just like, oh, this amorphous, what is it, theoretical victory somewhere down the road.
What you say?
Yeah, it's tricky, you know, because everything that I believe personally is that first class transportation does not help, you know, second class residents and citizens of the area. It's not for them, but you know, but it's always a balance, right? It's like yeah, I think you're right that we still have to figure out what kind of city we want to be. You know, perhaps we can say like we're opposed to this, and we're good at opposing, right? But like I don't think we're very good at proposing, you know, necessarily, because you know when it comes down to actual like policy, it's like we could say like we want lower rent. Okay, what does that look like? We want rent control. Okay, what does that look like? Well, you know, it looks like a board that that is either appointed or elected. Well, there's pros and cons to both of those. And then what are the rules that you know, so it's just a lot more than just sloganism and such. And it's a lot more than saying like no development period. Is that the leftist stance? Like, you know, and so, you know, those questions are legitimate questions. Like I mean, the fact of the matter is this, you know, the project is going to displace and it's going to raise the property values in the surrounding areas, right? So what other places have done is created land trusts, which Santana does have in Thrive Santana, you know, to kind of play into that areas of displacement so that it keeps the property values low for those areas. But there's complications there too. Like you need money. Like who has that money? Well, big funders. Who's, like who's funding what? You know what I mean? So it gets complicated. But I do think that with a rent control policy, it'll mitigate a lot of the damage, perhaps that development, usually does. Because then it just becomes a situation where the anti-gentrification folks like partner up with the NIMBYs. And then you get what you want in the short term. You shut down a project, but in the long term, you don't want to give more power to NIMBYs.
Well, yeah,
because you're different. You're coming at it from different angles, even though you want the same thing.
Right, and I think that I was thinking about this the other day in the sense that part of what I think is fairly present in the gentrification literature is like, okay, what developments lead to, and what sorts of investments lead to like patterns of gentrification, basically, and I mean in a very not limited scope, but like in a very defined scope of saying like, okay, how does an area basically force low income or lower income renters to live in an area that basically becomes increasingly unaffordable to them over time, and to such an extent that that family grouping or that person needs to then leave because they are unable to afford the area that they were formerly living in, right? So like in that very limited sense of like, that is what I see is pattern gentrification. When someone is for economic reasons driven out of their home and a place in their kind of place in the community. If someone decides to like leave because they wanted to leave and they wanted to go to a different area, I don't necessarily count that as like part of the pattern gentrification, because we have a lot of people like, yeah, I just want to move to another place, I like it over there better. The voluntary aspect of it I think is very important, in that sense of agency. So we have a lot of literature kind of talking about, oh, well, if you build something, it becomes more attractive and you end up kind of increasing the interest in an area, then that thereby like displaces people either directly through the demolition, removal, or replacement of existing lower income affordable units with higher end like units. Yeah, okay, it does happen, but there's also a pattern of like gentrification through stasis. So that by keeping things kind of locked away and like no production being done, that over time that limited supply actually is a strategy that you can employ in order to gentrify an area. So if you want to let's say if we were 1970s Santa Ana and we wanted to like basically kind of up the quality or the type of the average income of the resident moving into the city, if we wanted to kind of like increase that and like strategically remove poor people, one of the options that was on the table was to not build anything. And that just by just doing that, you would limit the supply of housing, and that the available units that were kind of left would then basically be in higher end units on average. So that is a strategy that the city actually actively did not pursue, and instead decided to create a lot of the apartment complexes that then now house the majority of our kind of lower income renters. So there was this like thought like that, well, are we going to allow lower income people to live here in multifamily units, because it's when you have apartments, they tend to be cheaper on average than having single family homes. And the city decided to not do that. So this entire pushback about having apartments and bringing in like poor people that we kind of do see with a lot of like NIMBYs saying like, hey, well, this used to be a wonderful neighborhood. I grew up here. There were a lot of cute historic homes. And, then apartments came in and ruined everything. Well, it's like, well, they might have ruined everything in the sense of like, yeah, that particular version of Santa Ana that you lived through, is no longer here and around. And it is sad to see kind of a loss of those historic structures. But then we don't really value the fact that, it provided housing for, 50 families that then were able to live here from the 1970s until the 1990s, and then, maybe into the 2000s. So, there are costs and benefits to even inaction. And that is something I think that is tough for kind of the left to reconcile, especially since the only response that we typically do when it comes to like housing strategy, like for most city governments and kind of like those folks kind of in positions of authority, is production. And we were like, oh, we're going to produce our way out of it. And that's a joke. You're never going to like out of this dip. In this deficit that we have.
The YIMBY movement, build, baby, build.
Yeah, the YIMBY, and like, I think that there's like certain aspects that are right about that in the sense of like, if you match your demand, you'll be able to get there. But what it doesn't take into account is whether or not a person is still displaced because they were living in a unit and then had no right to return to that location, had no ability to then rent one of these new units, or basically was not even given any form of compensation because they had no rights as a renter. So the thing that you have to build still is basic rental protection. So I think we did a really good job of that as a state with just cause evictions that are now kind of the rule of the rule of land, the rule of the land here, rule of law like throughout California. We still have more to do when it comes to the right of first refusal, basically allowing someone to purchase a property, like if they've been living there, that they have kind of the first right to basically match or exceed an offer. And then also that there should be some form of compensation or ability to return to a location that is being developed from, let's say, a fourplex or small kind of apartment unit to then something that's maybe 40 or 60 or something that's a little bit larger, that person should be compensated in order to either come back at the same rental rate or to have some form of access to housing, either through giving them some money to they basically buy another home, or some money to then like go live somewhere else that that matches up with what their needs are, but to give more choice. And so there's a wonderful book out there by Shane Phillips. So he's a researcher out of UCLA, and I think it's out of the Lewis Center, and he wrote a book called The Affordable City, and talks a lot about like these various policies, and it's kind of like balancing all these needs, because right now we've really in this city, in a lot of cities, you only focus on the supply issue without doing anything for stability or anything on subsidy, which is like then for people that are totally locked out of the housing system. So if we have people that have severe mental health issues that are basically kind of chronically locked out of the mainstream economy, there's always going to be the need for supplying that section of the housing. And for me, that the very simple answer there is social housing, right? So we basically have public housing. So I think I've always said like, more of a FINBI. I like public housing in my backyard. I really do believe that public housing actually is quite nice if you go to a lot of different cities throughout.
Projects.
Well, but see, the projects were done in such a way that once you made money, you were basically kicked out. So in a lot of social housing models, so like Vienna, Singapore, let's see, certain parts of London, well, before at least, you basically live there, but it's not means tested. Anyone can live there. It just happens to be so cheap that it basically competes with the market itself. So then the market rate folks also have to compete with this public housing option. It's like, well, yeah, I can pay you like $1,200, but if I go over here, it's $800. It's just as nice. They keep it up, and so there's actually an actual like competitive effect that occurs through that. Because for me, like the thing that I'm not necessarily so against are developers creating new units. It's people that basically buy up old apartment complexes with a giant loan that then expect to gain like 6% interest, like because they're able to raise the rents like 6% every year. And they're like, those are the people that I'm necessarily like, well, you didn't produce anything, and all you did was basically speculate that the cost of your rent was going to exceed the cost of your loan because you had enough money lying around from these other ventures you wanted to put into something that was stable, and you're expecting the entire kind of government apparatus to make sure that you have a stable increase in your rent. So I don't think that that's my job as an elected official to make sure that this private investment has a guaranteed rate of return of 6 to 7% year on year on year without actually having any other competitive factors go into it. So like to me, it's like, why am I subsidizing the wealthiest people in my community when I should be working for the people that need the most amount of help, especially in a city like Santa Ana?
Yeah, and when you're talking about that public housing, is that housing that's produced by the city, or managed, or either?
Produced, managed, put out to bid to be constructed by a private entity, then run by a private company, but then ultimately part of a public portfolio. So there are different models, and different ones work for different places. In fact, you can have one city that has kind of all 6, various combinations going on at once. But the main thing is that it's basically housing that is not built necessarily for profit, but it is run to cover cost. and you can actually kind of tweak it so that if you want, yeah, you can make a little bit of money, because then that's going to allow you to then reinvest the money into the construction of new units or into renovating or kind of saving money aside for massive kind of a capital, massive capital funds, then allow you to refurb the building to make sure that, hey, yeah, we know that roughly every 40 years, this thing's going to need a completely new HVAC system. There's going to be some plumbing issues down the road. And you want to do it in such a way that it also doesn't necessarily cost that municipality. The weird thing that happens in a place like Santa Ana is you have a lot of nonprofits, but then if they don't pay any like property taxes, then you actually end up decreasing the amount of other services that you can pay for. So you also have to take that into consideration. But I think I calculated this out once. It's like, if you leased it was like half an acre or something, and like you ended up leasing it for like $600 directly, the city would make more money off of that land lease than it would just getting the property tax revenue, because it's such a small percentage. So the county would be losing a lot of funding, and as with the state, but the city itself would actually be getting more money if they just kind of leased it. So there are things like that you can kind of like calculate out and like make it to the most advantage for the municipality, which is again separate. We have lots of levels of government, and a lot of these decisions are being made at the municipal level, at least in California. So, I think there are things that we can think a little bit more creatively about the way that we approach the way that housing policy works in California or doesn't work. But then also to, never ignore the finances, because if you are doing something that's like financially unsustainable, well, then it's an unsustainable like effort.
Right. And I don't know, that kind of just made me think of like, HOAs are formed to take care of their properties or buildings, and they're not designed to like make a profit necessarily. They're designed to upkeep, maintain. So it sounds like it's something like that is publicly managed. Like that even sounds like a land trust. And there's one more thing I wanted to hit on this subject, was just like, I don't know, I saw this headline, I can't see the article now, but that like they're saying that there's as many or more vacant units in LA than there are homeless people. So it's like, is it also an issue of the distribution of ownership of land? Because if a bunch of giant real estate multinationals own all the mortgages and can foreclose on everyone, and then maybe do what you're saying, like hold out, or I don't know why they have all these empty places, right? But there's literally homeless people on the street looking at the foreclosed home.
Yeah. So it'll depend on the specifics of the particular market. So I remember there was one study that was semi-controversial that came out, because then the numbers were kind of like skewed as far as like vacancy rates in downtown. It was like, well, the vacancy rates in downtown are like 13-15%. Like we're producing all these units and no one's going into it. But if you looked at it, it's like, yeah, it was like 13 or 15%, because you had a lot of new construction that basically occurred, and usually like within about like 2 to 3 months, it's like when they fill up. So you had like 3 major projects that came online, like one right after the other. So you had a glut, but then you like came back and like checked like 6-7 months later, then like the vacancy rate like had dropped down again to like 4 to 5%, which is like citywide average. So you had a lot of units that so at least in one particular study, I'm not sure if this is the one you're referring to, that was kind of the controversy around those numbers that were floating around. But at the same time, some of these numbers where you say you have like vacancies, yeah, you have vacancies, but maybe they're out like where there's a lot less demand rather than an area, especially when you take the US number, it's like, well, the US has more homes than homeless by like 2 or 3 fold. Yeah, but do you want to send someone to like the middle of a dying farm town, right? And like that's one of the options. It's like, yeah, I can buy you a home, but it's going to be like 50 miles away from the nearest medical center, and if that's like with an aging population where you want to start sending people, well, then that's another call. The things that happen though is again for dealing in situations where it truly is that you have these vacant units that are basically used as tax shelters, because in the United States, especially in California, it's very attractive because of Prop 13. You buy something, that the tax rate's not going to go up on it, and you're only paying 1%, and basically having this relatively stable store of wealth that on average exceeds the growth rate of inflation. So that if you store your money here, you can basically use it as a tax protected asset, right? So that's what makes it fairly attractive. So you can do like the city of Vancouver did. They basically started taxing foreign purchases, and then also kind of taxing like I think empty properties. So they were much more aggressive about targeting that. Fucking real estate folks had a meltdown, right? They're like, this is going to ruin our business, which it is, right? You're messing with real estate's like bread and butter, but that's like only one segment of the economy. And then at the end of it, you're like, okay, well, cool. Like there's a little bit more balance there. So like one of the things that's always like weird to me when you talk about whether or not there is going to be public or private intervention or how free the market should be free. All markets are basically, I think Robert Reich's, perspective is true on this, that markets are the result of public actions, right? So private markets are the result of public actions, and they're very intertwined. So all the rules and regulations that are already in place, basically defend certain practices, like it's a really good idea for me to park $1 million in like downtown LA because that condo is going to be worth $4 million in like 10 to 15 years, and I'm only going to be paying 1% on it, and that's totally fine, and I can write that off because then that's going to be taxed less than if I would have held it in some other asset class back in my home country because they're going to tax the shit out of me. So there are financial implications to these policies, and I think that vacancy taxes are a good idea. So when you tax basically buildings, units, or property that basically goes unused, there's a cost there. There's an increased likelihood that there's going to be fires in the units. There's increased calls for services, so your first responders have issues. There's overall maintenance things that kind of happen when you just have like property that's like left fallow, right? So you have other things that just kind of occur. It increases blight in an area. So all of those costs are basically being borne by the people that are investing into their properties. But if I was to like build something new, I would be fully taxed for like all of those improvements. If I decided to let a building basically fall down and just kind of rent out the land as, I think my favorite use is like, hey, yeah, you want to put your work truck on there, charge you $600 per car, like for the year, do that a couple of times over, make a bunch of money, don't have to pay anything to property taxes. Again, bought that thing in 1973, building's falling apart. Don't worry, they don't need electricity, wiring's messed up. They're not going to complain because they're getting a sweet deal and like I'm getting unreported like income. All that stuff happens. Yeah. And again, one of the things we can do is like, well, okay, we're going to tax that. And then it's like, oh, well, you're increasing taxes, you're anti-business. It's like, no, like I'm very much like about targeting bad actors and like disincentivizing actions that basically have these external costs, right? And that's something that you can do with public policy. Whether or not we think about things in that way, like, I don't know, but this is, I've been joking, but this is literally what happens to me now. It's like I wake up dreaming, like from dreams, like, oh shit, this is what we need to do about our local property tax.
Yeah,
exactly. That's exactly it. That's exactly it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Arnie woke up with like the lyrics of like "Let It Be" and shit. Like Manny wakes up with like policy proposals, like solve all our problems.
Yeah, we need more parklets. Like
I do like parklets, but I also believe we need more parks. Like period. Yeah. I'm not. Sure. I'm done with the parklets.
Yeah,
that's cool. I like them.
We need
Definitely
parks.
Should do them. We need parks.
They're not a substitute for parks.
Yeah, but it's
Manny, I have so many questions. And I'm sure the people that are commenting do as well. But
I don't know if anyone's commenting. Like I don't think we promoted this very heavily. Let's see.
I saw that there's like 36 comments. So somebody.
Oh yeah, there is.
Somebody's saying something.
What are they saying?
Would someone engage with our damn audience?
Yeah,
we need to hire someone for that.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I should have been logged into this. Like Ty, Jose Moreno, friend of the show, Ty fan, friend of the show, there. But yeah, they have Shane Phillips' book in there, so thank you for that. That's cool. Yeah, and Moreno is there, and I can't see the other comments because my computer's being weird.
Oh man, but so many things. I mean, I want to ask you about the housing opportunity ordinance, whether we should bring it back ASAP or sit on it.
So I do have an answer to this, and I wanted to say something because if I say it out in public, it makes it more real. But I have like 100 things that like I believe the city should do right now.
Yeah, you should write them down and share them.
No, I have written them down, and it's like 55 pages long so far, but it's only like maybe a quarter of the way done. So it'll end up being like a little like mini like goodbye of like, all right, goodbye, Santa Ana. This is what I believe you should be working on.
Yeah, this is what you would have had if you would have elected me. I hope you're happy.
No, this is what the city still can't have. They don't need me. Like that's the thing. We're all interchangeable in many ways, but we're all indispensable at the same time. That's to say, like everyone's super unique and has like their own spirit and like ability to contribute, but that we shouldn't hold ourselves as like the only one who has an answer. I just happen to be like. I really enjoy this, so that's why I do it. But at the end of it, if you just get a lot of people that care, they're going to come up with another 100 things that are going to be way better, or 1,000 things that are way better than any of these things I'm suggesting, because I'm only one person, and I only see this one little perspective that I have. But the thought is that you do things that help people, right? Like you do whatever you can in some small way to help people.
Yes. So housing
Amen.
opportunity. Yes.
So
Yeah.
I know.
Like, just
Uh-oh.
put it all out there. You're leaving anyway. Who
Uh-oh.
cares?
Yeah.
No. So I have this as item. It looks like it's item 13 in the list. So this is housing opportunity 2.0.
Lucky number. Yeah.
Lucky 13, exactly. Oof. All right. No, I think that we can revamp it. So one of the things that was, and I didn't really like talk about it like during that little like op-ed that I wrote because I thought that politically it wasn't like the best or the main audience. It wasn't going to like register with folks. But one of the things that the WHO revision also did is it took away our local density bonus law, which is basically to say that, hey, if you produce affordable housing, we'll give you like the extra capacity to build more units. So it's very much like one of these incentives that like, yeah, if you're going to build and you decide to build, I mean, you want to build a few more units, put more affordable ones, especially kind of on the lower end of the spectrum, and then you'll be able to basically produce more affordable housing, right? And that might be something that a lot of cities do to encourage, right? It's a bonus. It's not anything where it's like discouraging units. It's actually very much like a very solid way of creating additional affordability. The problem with that is it does add units, right? So you're adding a lot of in a space that you're not necessarily expecting it. So the city kind of quietly gutted that area as well. So it basically had this thing that was working that created a lot of like affordable senior housing units on East Main. No, not East Main, East First. Maine doesn't have East.
Yeah. It's that entire side of Maine. All the way.
Yeah, so like that Metro East overlay zone. Basically had like these two projects that were right next to each other that produced like, a slew of affordable senior and a slew of affordable just kind of general like, units. And that used its density bonus, and then that was taken out. So I think that if we look at it again, we'd probably want to re-examine that in a little bit more detail. The thing that was to me most controversial was, and I put in a public records request to see if the initial, if the initial study that was supposed to have been done by our outside consultants to say like, oh, how much should the WHO be, right? Like how much should we be charging? If that was ever completed. Turns out it was completed before there was a public discussion about gutting the WHO, but that report was never made public. Mm-hmm. So there's a report out there that basically says that the WHO, yeah, you can afford anywhere between $14 to $16. Yeah, go for 14 just in case, right? And that report that we paid for, that was paid for by taxpayer money, that the person, because we got like a bunch of the emails back, the person was ready to report on that day, like in front of council, was told, hey, yeah, you don't have to come here. Like this is already like been wrapped up. We're not even gonna we're not gonna make this public. Basically, like it's already been, like the decision's already been made. Yeah. So that to me is what really pissed me off, right? And that was like, why? Like we were paying for a report, we didn't even make it public. You didn't even allow it to be part of the public discussion.
Data-driven policy, right here.
Oh my god, I love our data-driven policy. So, that is actually what angered me out of like this whole episode more than anything. Is that no, like, look, if you want to make the argument that yeah, like this number was probably not as conservative, and there are reasons why we wanted to change it, I will respect that. If you have a different point of view on the housing opportunity ordinance and kind of the monetary area, totally acceptable. But to like not include the professional report that we're supposed to be relying on for outside consultants that specialize in this area and literally are like the folks that write these reports for like every other city in the state of California. Well,
but come on, we're just a major city in California, the United States of America.
Yeah, we're only the 11th now, though. We're only the 11th. We were once number 8, or wait, number 9. Now we're down 11. But so to put part of that is I think that post COVID, yeah, we probably should like lower the number because of the amount of construction and kind of lack thereof. But that if you do that, you basically put it to like all new construction. So instead of having it only apply in certain like cases, you would lower the amount and then have it kind of more spread out throughout the city. So it's just like a general standing practice. I can't see that, if you're in a housing market that isn't necessarily that hot, you can overshoot that number. So again, my thinking on this is evolved since reading Shane Phillips' work on this, right? I'm like, oh, okay, this is something to be aware of, because at the end of it, I don't necessarily want to be right about an issue. I just want the best possible information so that we get to our goal, which is I want people to have high quality, stable, affordable housing that they can basically raise a family in, right? Like that's what I want. I want people to be able to not raise a family, because actually, as someone who's not raising a family, I want people to be able to, be members of a community and to be able to stay there as long.
Kids.
Like just by that, like you can like double or triple your carbon output and totally be okay because you're not having babies. So the the end goal is kind of like what the guiding light is. Like, how can you keep a community welcoming for people? And I think there's a really good line there. It's like, how you can be what does a sanctuary city mean when like no immigrant can afford to live there? And that was like a line that kind of stuck out. So like, if we're claiming to be the sanctuary city, well, who do we provide sanctuary for if they can't afford to live here? And so that's one of those things where if density bonuses are a better way, but that seems to be something we can include in a new housing opportunity ordinance with a maybe lower base rate. Okay, maybe it is the $5 to like $10 range, so it's less than what was being paid before, but it's being paid by all projects rather than just a subset of projects that you can try to find exemptions for.
Yeah. What one thing I wanted to bring up on this subject is just like, I mean, there's been a good amount of construction going on in this last year, and I just feel like when they kind of reduced, or whatever you want to call it, they messed with the HOO, right? Isn't this kind of just like, because the private industry is a monopoly basically on housing production, they have a huge negotiating stick with the city, because the city ain't building shit. Maybe they have some money stored away, but I don't know if it's enough to actually like start their own project. You know what I mean? So like, and I just want to tie this to another story, the hero pay.
Okay.
Right? Remember Long Beach and Irvine passed these things, and in Long Beach, Kroger said, "Okay, we're pulling two of our stores because we can't afford it," even though there have been record profits in the last year.
Right.
So is this? Yeah. Go ahead.
No, but it's a power play, right? It's like, how powerful is Kroger versus like like the influence of people that can influence Kroger.
Yeah.
But I would say it's like, what is important to me in this story is like, okay, so what are Kroger's best performing stores, and how can we make that number drop? So it's like, look, if Kroger's doing this, like, is there something that can be done in order to basically put pressure on their best performing assets so that they end up losing more money? So like having a very small, like having 3 people in front with a sign at like targeted businesses across Southern California that then make up a majority of their profits, I think would be kind of another kind of power play forward, right? So it's like, it's not just about defensively reacting to this. It's like boohooing it. It's like, okay, if this is your play, well, here's my play. So, what are the Kroger brands that are out there? I really don't know, actually. So is it the route? Like, what is Kroger? Like, it's like, so, this is not an issue that I necessarily followed that closely, which probably, I should be ashamed to say, but that's the truth. Don't want to lie about that. So that's like, to me, the play is like, okay.
Yeah, how do we fight back? But I mean, it to me, it talks about an imbalance of how we've organized our economy. Because we basically said, well, I mean, most of our food, you get it through a private means. All of our housing production is done pretty much through private means. But if we surrender all of our things and we don't have like an option that like we're close to, that like we trust, like, shouldn't we have some kind of institution, nonprofit housing or government housing or whatever it is, something that isn't corporate, that has more ties to people? Because once all these multinationals own all the gears of the economy, they can start saying, hey, well, I don't want to build in your city until you half your HOO, or I'm going to pull, if you dare say that our heroes need $4 more an hour, and you're making billions and billions of dollars as a multinational company, you can't afford to pay these people, or you don't want to. Right? Because they have all the cards. So, I mean, I feel like, don't we have to build alternatives,
Yeah, I think that building alternatives is kind of like the area that I'd like to see a little bit more focus on. Because things start small and then they grow, and then eventually they become disentangled from kind of what originally they were meant to do, right? It's like,
Mm.
so even on the corporate side, you can have like corporations that were just maybe really successful at doing one thing and they ended up growing. I think in turning into things that you would no longer recognize, which is, okay, so what's like one of the biggest unregulated banks in the United States that everyone goes to every day and is pretty much a member of, or not every day, but a good chunk of America goes to every day and
Bank of
doesn't even
America.
realize.
Wells Fargo.
Jonathan, Dylan.
It's a bank, the Federal Reserve. I have no idea. What is it?
Starbucks.
Starbucks is a bank.
Starbucks makes a lot of their money basically holding money and investing money that goes into their gift cards. So there's such a large operation that those gift cards basically end up funding like their financing. Like, so they get money at like 0% from their own members that then basically get put on cards that get kind of transferred and like moved around. That money is then reinvested either into their own stores, and basically providing themselves with like 0% financing for any infrastructure and any kind of capital, like the let's see, outlays that they have to do, while at the same time allowing them to invest into like other areas, right? So like they started off as a coffee company that now is basically morphed into an unregulated banking system, which is crazy, right? Like that's like, like
That's awesome. I never thought of it like that. Yeah.
Amazon started off just selling, old books.
Yeah.
And then they're like, wait, there's all this money with all this data that we're, collecting from all these people, and then became that.
That was actually sort of wrong. Like Bezos wanted to sell everything. He just needed something that he could sell, that he could corner a market on. That was a big enough market. So he deliberately chose books with the idea that he was going to be the store for everything. He wanted to be that online Walmart, like from day one, but it was like books that were the entryway.
Interesting. Well, like speaking of like, like big corporations getting around, with Kroger and such. And I think you're right, Dylan. Like, but at the same time, like we give these businesses the power to do these kinds of things. I mean, folks have tried to do like, like what is it? Like garden markets, right? Open markets. But of course, if you go there and try to buy produce, it's going to be fresher and, like straight from the farms to you. You're going to be paying $1 more, or $2 or more than what you are. And so it's like, we could be mad at Walmart, but also like we understand that people go to Walmart because they save money and they don't care about like the long-term effects, because they just want the short-term, bargains and the cuts. I mean, Uber comes to mind too, right? Like Uber in California said like, California said AB5. Now you have to make your employees, your independent contractors employees, because you're categorizing them. And Uber's like, oh, well, screw you, California. Here's like, this proposition. And they were able to like basically like pay their way out of regulation. And it's troubling because, like on the one hand, corporations are evil, like corrupt, especially the more powerful that they get. But at the same time, like we literally give them the money and the tools for them to, to screw us over in various ways. So then like, what is the option? Yeah, like privatization, bad. But again,
oh man, I'm gonna be weird saying this on the show, but now that I'm not gonna be here anymore, I can do this, right? Okay. I'm gonna defend corporations on your show.
Awesome.
Let's go.
Oh,
no, like
colors come out.
No, like it's this weird thing where like because there's been an evolution like in the American capitalist system in which you transition from like most boards being stakeholder boards, right? Or like basically like management had this kind of stakeholder management theory where they basically were supposed to be one of the actors balancing the interest of stockholders, balancing the interest of the board, but then also balancing the both short and long-term interest of the company itself. So like, oh, we have to make these investments and we're not going to be making as much money like over the next quarter, but it's going to keep our employees happy and we're going to reinvest and we're going to be a much more competitive institution, right, as a corporation over the long haul, right? So this is like GM, IBM, like in the 50s and 60s, paying union wages, investing a lot in like, let's see, what was IBM's? And was it Bell Labs? So they basically like invented all like this basic technology that helps run the telecommunications revolution. And then that was all done like, of course, with government partnerships and like a very entrepreneurial, very strong federal government. But it was a different model of what a corporation was. Whereas now we basically we take it for granted that corporations are only meant to support the stockholder value, right? And it was basically that everything begins and ends with the stockholder. But then that's something that even within the business community and the corporate community has shifted over time. So like part of it is also getting that to shift back to the more historic truth, which or the more historic outlook, which is that corporations actually are stakeholders in various entities beyond the people that invested money in them. They're only one of the interests, and then that's something that basically need to rewrite the way business school teaches how you manage a company, because you end up finding that certain corporations, like Patagonia, is probably a pretty good example, that they're like very gung ho on putting money aside to save particular wildlife refuge areas. They cost a lot more, so it's super affluent, right? And you got a lot of tech bros wearing their stuff because it's like expensive as hell. But it does source from like sustainable locations. It ends up providing really good union benefits. Does things that are fairly good for its employees as far as maternal leave, all those sorts of things. So it's a different like model of a corporation. So I think that's partially the answers. We also have to say that corporations themselves have a responsibility to reorientate themselves to actually serving their communities and not just extracting value. And that those companies that are unwilling to do so are basically non grata in different locations. So that's where you basically start removing the leeches and the parasites, right? And the true folks that do not want to change and basically only want to exploit. And then you start making room for other innovative companies or companies that are competitors that have these different models, and you start kind of moving towards them, right? So that's at least some of the power on the consumer side. But with that said, that was my defense of corporations. Done.
How dare you?
I know.
Hey,
But-
corporations are people too.
Yeah.
Only oh fuck, god damn it. Yeah, unfortunately.
Pizza's a vegetable. Okay.
No, ketchup is a vegetable.
Yeah, no,
The
but
sauce on the pizza is a vegetable.
There you go. So
think
the
you're right.
no, but I did want to finish that
go
thought
on.
really quickly. Was
Yeah.
The other side of that is that there are particular industries that should not be motivated by profit, right? So I think that healthcare, prisons, immigration detention being a subset of that, that there are certain areas that you should not have a profit motive, because I do believe that people react to incentives. So if your incentive is to make a lot of money, right? And like, oh my God, I'm living this really great lifestyle and like making hundreds of millions of dollars in my company, but that means that I need to get more bodies into my prison. That's what you're going to do. If you're an insurance company that makes a lot of money upcharging and then basically providing the least amount of services as possible, that's what you're going to do. So there are things where that acceptance of like, okay, there's roles for corporations in the world and businesses in the world, right? And it's basically to say like, look, there are things that you probably don't want a large government agency to do. So as someone who's not a, like maybe an anarcho-socialist rather than like a full-on, like I want the strong state and everything. Like I really do fear like an overreach by most government agencies, because it's just like any other institution where power is concentrated and then corrupts. So there's certain things where it should make sense because you have enough of a divergence between a profit motive and what that particular industry or that particular service should be providing, that needs to be kind of taken over and have some kind of public control. And there are other instances in which, people that make my t-shirts, probably less of an incentive there. Choice is probably cool there. I want my bands to have different labels, and that's a corporation in a lot of senses. So that I don't think it's going to be either or, and that we're going to be living in a mixed economy. And I think that the most successful kind of countries are those that have been able to balance their mixed economies between something that has socialized safety nets, as well as kind of the ability to create something new outside of a particular power structure that is governance.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, and even like Adam Smith, he even said there's a public sector, there's a private sector, and they're different, right? And you can't relegate every responsibility. I'd even point to Texas as a problem of taking on the individualist aspect of deregulation and laissez-faire capitalism. And I would say it caused probably the crisis, the policy choices they made. But like that's the other thing. It's like, I even think in a lot of public fields, you could have private options, right? And it wouldn't totally corrupt the whole thing either, right? There's like a nuanced balance between things, right? So I'd feel so much more comfortable with Kroger pulling their stores out if there's a public food co-op that you could also buy groceries at. Like it's like, how the Postal Service guarantees delivery to anyone in the United States? No corporation's doing that. And that's something we decided as a country that we would provide, right? And we said we're going to do it, and they're doing it.
Right, but it's also like how would I say this like nicely too? It actually made people a lot of money, right? It's like there's certain things you can do, like a universal postal system, that then basically makes areas that would otherwise be inaccessible and not really have any value, right? Like if you can't even get mail out there or have like no basic roads or basic electricity, like your ability to actually live out there off the grid, highly limited, right? So like these public investments actually do serve a long-term have long-term economic benefits, because you basically are able to make land that would otherwise be unproductive productive with this additional input from the federal government, right? So this public investment results in something that's very that has a lot of financial benefits outside of the government, and that we just kind of like take for granted. So that's
There's a little ripple effect.
It totally does.
Speaking of energy and Texas, so there's one situation that recently came up with, and it's called Community Choice Energy. It's a movement apparently, and in Orange County, different folks are joining, rallying around it. I believe Irvine, Buena Park, Fullerton, Huntington Beach are already in, and folks are pushing for Santana to be a part of it. So, the question came up to the council, and so staff are going to research the pros and cons. But yeah, what are your thoughts on it? Like, is that something that Santana should do? It's like,
I definitely think it's worth looking into. So I would have been a proponent of like just like saying, okay, we'll check it out and we'd like to join, and then everything.
What exactly is it, Manny? If you can, for folks that don't know.
So my basic understanding of it was very, and you'll see this is a very surface level understanding of this. Basically, the way that right now the city of Santa Ana gets its electricity is through our local Edison company, right? So there's a public utility that then has a monopoly that then controls kind of what electricity goes where, what those charges are, the program. So everything that involves the electricity that you use, that we're using right now, that you're seeing with all these beautiful lights and the sound of my voice being transmitted over the internet, powered by everything else, right? All those great electrons doing their work. Edison basically controls where the source of that energy comes from, buys it kind of wholesale, like on this like electric market that then is either tied to, let's say, a nuclear power plant, fossil fuel plant, wind, hydro, electric, solar, all that stuff. A community choice aggregator basically replaces that public utility with another agency that then ends up buying and selling electricity wholesale for a particular area. And in this case, what we're essentially trying to do is create one then for the county with these various cities, so that they can pull the resources together, so that the management of the system is more professionalized, and then has additional purchasing power, and then the ability to do the investments needed to, let's say, like, we want to transition to 100% solar. Okay, what's it going to take to get there? This is what we're going to do. You don't want to probably go 100% solar, 100% renewable with like some baseload stuff taken in there. So this is basically a way to move away from Edison as a public utility to then having this community choice energy for the city of Santa Ana. There are certain cities, like let's say like Anaheim, that if Marino's still listening, has their own electrical production, right, and actually kind of controls that at the municipal level. So for them, they probably wouldn't want to touch this because they already have public control over their utilities. And my understanding is that makes the city of Anaheim a lot of money. In fact, as much or more than maybe some of the parts of the resort district, right? Like having a public utility actually makes money for that for that agency. So the option here is like, okay, does Santa Ana want to join it? We could, or we couldn't. We can continue as is. The problem ends up being, until we actually do it, we're not going to really be so certain about what the actual incomes are our outcomes are in terms of pricing, reliability, and then kind of any like other additional impacts. So right now, a lot of our folks, I think one of the things that was brought up is a lot of our folks get benefits from Edison that are kind of subsidized by other agencies because there are a lot of lower income residents that then have like electrical bills under a certain amount. So like, will those rules that benefit certain low income electrical users here in the city be transferred over to the rules that we have with this new system? And there's no guarantee there, right? It's like Santa Ana will be one vote. We kind of already know what we have here. We're not necessarily sure what's going to go on with the other stuff. If California is already mandating all this transition into renewables and solar, Edison's probably already, or we could be already on their way to kind of making those mandates. So this would almost be a moot point if like, that's one of the issues. And it could just be that, what, this new agency doesn't have the capital in order to really invest in those things. So then we're going to be like losing out on our ability to kind of manage this, right? So there's a lot of ifs with this. And especially if any of those changes then actually ends up increasing the cost of electricity locally. It looks like it might be split, right? So like it's one of those things where like this is something where I would love to talk to 4 to 5 technical specialists that all disagree in order to figure out if we have anything that we agree on, because it's a very complicated issue. And that's where I think the city's consultant was a little bit more conservative and said like, yeah, it's really hard to tell if there are going to be any savings from this. Whereas Irvine's consultant, which is also kind of the consultant then doing the reports for everybody else, is like, no, let's go. This is gung ho. So now I'm like, all right, who's the third party that's saying like, well, it's a little bit of both, a little bit of A, a little bit of B.
But Irvine has a balanced budget, so every choice they make is it's amazing. Apparently,
They have a balanced budget, but they also have how do I say this? Lightly.
How do you say this lightly? You're leaving the region, so
I am leaving the region. I can say whatever I want.
Woo!
But, no, it's like
out. Want the world to know.
no. So
Nice.
Irvine has benefited from a couple of things. Number one, it's a newer city, right? So like the overall like infrastructure and maintenance costs that they have, it's later in their life cycle. So there's that. They did a really smart move of like donating land for the university, which basically provided them with their economic base, right? So that was like something that they did really, really well, was that they had a research university in their backyard, and they kind of built the town around that. And I think that was absolutely perfect. They also were beneficiaries of the Melrose legislation, which then allows you to basically have an additional 0.5% property tax on certain developments if everyone in that development agrees to it. And what that basically does is it doubles like your local like revenue. So because they're taxed, they're taxed more, they're able to invest more, they're able to keep everything nice, and then the property values are also higher. So then you reinvest that into your school. So it kind of shows that, hey, if you actually tax an area and use those taxes to reinvest into that community, that you actually end up with better results because you're able to really have strong institutions, right? And definitely, I think one of the former mayors here in the city said, the thing with Irvine that happened was that Irvine was going to be a town for wealthy people, right? Like it was built as a town for wealthy people, and once that happened, Santa Ana kind of bled off a lot of its like middle class and upper class folks. So it was kind of like the first of the southern South County cities to do that. But now it's kind of in this weird position where it's becoming more progressive in a lot of ways beyond just the identity aspects, but really kind of even economically more progressive than before. Definitely one of the most mixed racially as far as like cities that we have in the county, and produces more affordable housing units than the city of Santa Ana does, right, on a yearly basis. So these are all things that the city of Irvine does really well. But it places.
But
places.
Now for the shade, get them.
It did that by basically being like an exclusionary suburb in its first like development period, and still kind of saying like, all right, we're gonna mix these, not let these things touch.
And never forget that Irvine, gave way to Sac de la Rocha and all of the anger that came with it. So.
Oh really? Yeah. No, there you go.
Yeah, you didn't know that?
It's all worth it.
It was all worth it.
Grew up there. And, it was all worth it. Yeah, it's like, can't be so pretty there, huh? Because he started raging against.
Rage against the machine. No wonder.
It's probably like some multi-million-dollar like suburb now, isn't he? Like, I'm sure he's got like a mansion somewhere. Like, I don't think he's living in the hood still.
Hey, you leave Zach alone, all right? He went through a lot.
Friend of the show. Wait.
Friend of the show.
No, friend of El Centro.
Yeah, no, friend of El Centro for sure. No, but yeah, I'm just saying, like, that's the thing. It's like we can't like there are things that happen. You can't just like lump people in, and you know.
Yeah.
It's
Well, I always hate comparisons to Irvine because Irvine is Irvine, and you know, they were a pre-planned city. And that's not what other cities were. Then it was just kind of like, all right, this is what we're gonna do, and then after the fact, they're like, oh man, we did a lot of stuff that we shouldn't have done. Had we had, you know, the foresight to know, like, this is, you know, not gonna be just, you know, Mexicans or working class or railroad, you know, whatever it was, you know, that it was, you know. So that's, yeah, I don't like Irvine for that, but you know,
Ooh.
but you are right that
Shots
they're very
fired.
progressive, and like they have a whole bunch of affordable housing, and you know, now they have Farrah Khan, who's like been on the show previously, you know, at the helm over there. So
Jose hates your city.
but
I just love Anaheim and Sacramento more is all.
yeah, no, and that's why they're different places for different folks and stuff. And I guess maybe with age, like now I understand it more. But as a kid, I never was like, oh. But also, I think part of it has also been this ingrained fear, and I'm hoping that this kind of breaks down over time, of feeling unwelcomed in places like that, right? It's like this very much like the sense of like, I'm coming from the other side of the freeway. It's not the other side of the tracks anymore. It's the other side of the freeway. And you know, that kind of sense of like shame that was like kind of beaten into you like from a young age is something that we still have to address. And I think more and more we're able to be very proud of, you know, the cities that we come from and what we've done, kind of the various like histories, rather than only being shamed by like, well, I come from the poorer part of the county, which in fact is still one of the most affluent areas and probably nice, you know, like compared to a lot of other areas. Like, no, I'm really glad I grew up in Santa Ana. Like, this is a very nice community. I love so much about it. And that, you know, that took time to kind of get to that point. But kids are mean, right? Like, especially high school kids, they're assholes. Sorry, I worked with them. They're assholes.
Yeah, we're getting hate mail from the youth and from Irvine residents today.
You're an asshole, Manny.
No, I'm just saying, it's like, and then like you'll grow up and you're like, yeah, well, it kind of was, and it's like, yeah.
Yeah, man. Well, Manny, you took us on a roller coaster ride of, you know, of everything inside your brain.
Yeah, all your cold sweat, you know, waking ideas. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's like, oh, if we only.
That's exactly what I was like. Oh wait.
Yeah.
Hey, so Jose Moreno asked if you're going to get the Raiders to come back to Oakland.
I don't think I can do the Allegiant Stadium. That thing is just so nice. I passed by that sucker and it was crazy how large that stadium was. I'm like, wow, I think the Raiders are going to stay here. Just judging by the stadium itself, and I don't think a public subsidy for a stadium is a good deal in any city except maybe Vegas, because that's, yeah.
Well, how about this other policy question as a follow-up? Would you support renaming the team to the Oakland Raiders of Santa Ana?
I would. I would support that.
Okay, you're going. Remember, the community you're going into is going to be quoting you on that.
Man,
you might catch flack day one.
No, but you retained Oakland, like, so that'd be the Oakland Raiders of Santa Ana in Las Vegas. Is that like what we're at?
by way of Las Vegas. We need more prepositions, like.
Yeah. We already got the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, but although they dropped Anaheim, now they're just the Los Angeles Angels in Orange County. God help us.
That's left off.
That's what you get when you have a Trump supporter as you know, the owner of a.
Shots fired.
Well,
take that, Artie Moreno.
Yeah, and you know what? Fuck Lou Correa, by the way.
Oh,
at it.
Damn.
Fuck you.
I do not endorse statements that were just said.
Damn, man.
Damn.
Oh, you're leaving. You don't care.
He has a good sense of humor. He knows we're kidding.
Yeah. This is purple dinosaur.
He knows we're kidding.
Bashing of of centrist Democrats. Hard to
Yeah,
understand.
I was channeling Jose there. Sorry.
Hey, so you're gonna leave Central Committee? What are we gonna? What like?
Yeah. So this
What is
gonna
the DPOC gonna do without you? Where are
apparently
we-
it'll continue doing what it's already been doing. So like
which
I'm
is
sure
a
that
bunch
machinery.
of like endorsing Avellino. Just like no, I'm not thrilled. Yeah.
I
And-
liked Avelino. I liked Avelino as a person. I'm not as familiar with Anaheim politics, obviously, but
Jose Moreno can't get a second or a third from either Jordan Brandman or Avellino, which are the Democrats on there. Both endorsed by the party.
well, that's what ward-based elections got you.
Yeah, and so that's the kind of
Bitter.
thing that I'm worried that could happen here in Santana, right? Going back to the power of the Police Officers Association, like they lost bigly, in this last election. They basically every single one that they supported in a roundabout ways directly lost, and so now they're licking their wounds. But like they spent spent a bunch of money on the recall of Ceci, but that ultimately bit them in the butt because they couldn't spend as much money perhaps supporting their candidates or attacking the ones that they did not want.
Yeah, no, and I do like the candidates that we ended up with, right? So I think that Jonathan, Ty, Jesse, and Sarmiento are all their hearts are in the right place. I even think, in fact, that the other three are doing what they believe is best. I disagree with some of the decisions, but we don't have as much, I would say, as like direct self-dealing I think that we might have had previously, right? So even like that level of like self-dealing is at least a little bit absent, that as far as I can see. Voice of OC, please correct me with like any kind of hard-hitting news. But that's what I'd rather have, right? I'd rather have like philosophical and kind of political debate, right, where we don't have to necessarily hate each other. Because I think that's destructive for the community as a whole. And I really do think that we need to figure out ways to kind of address issues rather than just making it about a particular personality or not. But 2022 is still going to matter because that could swing the other way, and we could lose the potential for progressive majority. So I don't think like let up. The big news there is essentially, since I will be leaving, I will no longer be a member of the Central Committee once I move up there. The job is 100% remote at this point, so I was like, should I just stay? But like, no, that would be offensive to the people of Oakland. Never plan for a city you don't live in, right? I do not want to work in like that's you have to be in it, right? You have to be involved. Like otherwise, I don't think I would be attracted to this sort of job if you weren't actually there, seeing it and figuring out what actually the community needs and how to best serve it. But we need people to run for Ward 6. We need someone in Ward 2, in Ward 4, and barring any like 100% change of heart from Sarmiento, in there for sure. So, I think it's still going to be a very interesting 2022.
Yeah, he's going to be in there again, right? Like, or he's running, but he has said that he's going to be out in 4 years. So that's going to be interesting to see who takes over from there. He might be running against Lou Correa.
What?
Yeah.
And that's the thing with Vince. It's like Vince can basically like, does he want to go to the state? Does he want to go federal? Does he want to go county? Right? He's going to have all kind of those options. So depends what he wants to do.
Yeah. Well, I know what I don't want to do. I don't want to freaking support dinos with the DPOC. And like I was really mad because I lost this recent election for the ADEM.
Oh.
And I was like, and this was so stupid. Like I was annoyed for various reasons that I'm not gonna get into right now. But then I thought again of Manny. It's like like if I feel like hurt right now, like I imagine like times 10, like what Manny felt running for council. This is just a stupid ADEM seat. It doesn't matter, but still, like it felt like it sucked. It sucks losing, man. And it sucks losing you, Manny. Don't go.
Well, I wanted to end on a happy note because I'm not I'm still going to be working on a few projects. So like I'm retaining 2 Santa Ana projects during my time up there. So one of it's I'm still continuing my history work because that's where I think my unique contribution is. Like the other stuff other people can do and like probably do it better. But I've still been kind of diving into my history stuff here in Santa Ana, so I'm still working on that. The other one is like I'm gonna try to launch a little Santa Ana news blog, so I can drop it in a preview link. It's not fully operational right now, but it is.
Puro party.
No, that's just a subset. So that's just the podcast section here. I'm going to drop it into the Facebook link, which you don't have access to.
Trust.
Yeah, you'll have to drop it into our chat here on Zoom.
What's the chat? I can't just put it there. You're not going to log in for this, like this cutting edge news. It is like barely starting, so it's like this is something I'd like to do.
I saw it. I think I did at least. I'm excited for it. So you are not leaving us all together. Like you're telling us there's a chance.
well, this is where my family lives. So this is like, my family's still all here, my mom and dad. So I'll be down here like fairly frequently, still probably be collecting Santa Ana art. But yeah, like the two projects I'll be keeping up with from afar would be the Santa Ana history works. I'll be spending a lot of time at the Bancroft Library in Berkeley because a lot of the books that I kind of check out over here are going to be available there. And then the work from afar, which is mostly to develop the platform and get other people to contribute local stories, kind of serve as a little repository for just different events. And because one of the things that maybe a lot of people didn't know before I left, and now that they do, I used to write for Santanero. I was like one of their like contributors with like a different name, so no one knew that it was me writing. Right? I was like, yeah, exactly. But so shout out to Santanero. Got my
zine.
Santanero zine, yep. But it kind of like, because I feel like we're missing out on a lot of our cultural coverage. So a lot of the things that are kind of going on, just having additional stories, especially now that the OC Weekly is, no longer here. There are a lot of narratives, and I think that today is just as interesting and just as fascinating as any other time in our history, and that if we don't document it, then we're going to be missing out on those stories for future generations and kind of serving as inspiration, right? So I'm inspired by so many people that are doing amazing things in the city. A lot of them, doing it ages way younger than I am, better voices than I ever could have hoped to have at that age, and with a sense of purpose. So if there's anything we can do to encourage that, even if only from afar, that's something I hope to still be a part of.
Go.
Amen to that. Well, Manny, yeah, it's just it's good to hear that, and I'm glad that we ended on a positive note because it was like there's all these problems, and truly, I think many, like I speak for myself and many folks in the community, like I think it's like you don't know what you have until it's gone, and so I think it's one of those things that folks sometimes don't value, like the people in their lives, enough, and understand that, you say that nobody's indispensable, but there's shoes that are not quickly filled by anybody anytime soon. I don't know of any other Santana historian as cool as you. There might be, but definitely won't be as cool as, as death metal rocking Manny Escamilla. So
yeah.
Sir Manny Escamilla.
Yes, and like I said earlier, it is bittersweet because dude, I remember when like I was doing some research into the police department, and I would come down to the archives, and you'd show me some documents and stuff, and just throughout the years, you'd definitely be you're someone I've respected the work they've done, respected the amount of dedication they've shown. To your community, and but it's like this thing where it's like you have to let them go. It's like Adam Elmarek leaving. It's one of our true heroes of our little community here.
But he still lives here, doesn't he? Like I thought he still lived in like no, or did he move?
The hell?
Yeah, exactly. Like he works for the LA Times. I know, but he doesn't say hello. I don't see him at the bar anymore.
I haven't seen him.
Yeah, I never seen him downtown and stuff.
Yeah, but I mean, the struggle is everywhere, man, and I'm proud that you're moving on to that's a huge stage, Oakland. So
yeah, so that's why, because they were like the earlier joke was like, Santa Ana used to be like number 9, and it was like Oakland was number 8. It's still Oakland's still number 8, so I'm like, okay,
it still counts.
Yeah, so 45th largest city in the United States. I can make it to Long Beach, which is slightly bigger, and then like LA would be like the big jump, and they could still be in Southern California.
Yeah. But yeah, man, I know you're continue to do the good work, and the work is needed everywhere. So God bless your soul.
All right. Yeah. So thank you once again, Manny. We will be talking with you soon enough. I know it. Yeah, this is not over. It's not over until I say it's over.
I'm getting my virtual tour of Santa Ana. Okay.
And I want that list of like the 50 or so things that we need to get done. All right. You got homework. You got a legacy that you got to leave for us, buddy. Yeah. And we also have to get drunk together before you leave. Anyways, woo! Yeah, I love drunk Manny. He's fun.
Oh yeah, good stuff. I'm glad we could spend some extra time with Manny.
Indeed, we spent all the time. We made up for all the the week that we haven't been on here.
Apologies to the engineer, our wonderful engineer Edgar.
Yeah, the most wonderful Edgar Silva. Iron Lion Media, Iron Lion Studio. Yeah, you can record your podcast or your one hit wonder.
Yeah, your mixtape, baby.
Mixtape.
Your solo album. Yeah.
I got some bars.
Uh.
Yeah, so you can get all of that and more here. I want to thank everybody that tuned in and appreciates this. I was like, do I still want to do this show? Do I want to just, leave like Facebook altogether? But no, I don't want to. And for the record, I did not leave Facebook because I lost the election. It's just a culmination of many things. And I think, Manny was alluding to it, at least, in the ways in which we engage in dialogue and being able to to call people in and figure things out offline as opposed to online is really the kind of culture that I want to be a part of. And I don't want to be a part of the culture that drags people online and because it's just a lot of toxicity in the world, and we just need a lot more love and unity and solidarity and restorative justice and all the things that are going to help us build a stronger, more powerful left movement. Because right now I'm very much lacking hope and I just whether it's the party politics or the grassroots politics, there's just so much division. I mean, my brother Dylan and I got into a heated argument not too long ago on this here show that, because we're so passionate, but also so frustrated with this unprecedented situation of the pandemic that, we forget to acknowledge each other's humanity. And, I believe in Christ. I'm a Christian in that regard, not, belonging to a church, but just, and so I believe in those tenets of, forgiveness and mercy and unconditional divine love, because that's what my master taught me, and that's the kind of life that I want to live. So, anyways, that's my rant on it. But those of you that miss me on Facebook, I will be back eventually. Those of you that don't miss me, then don't worry, like just unfriend me already.
God damn it.
And it's not a pity party. It's more just like, everybody needs to know when it's time to tap out for a time and tap in to what's good. I started this movement because I wanted to bring people together. I started doing open mics. That's how I got started, and uplifting people through them opening up their hearts and sharing their art and their talents. And so, in that spirit, I feel very happy that I'm going to be a part of the Art and Culture Commission, because I want to be able to bring that out. There's so much talent in our youth, muralism and poetry and hip hop and dance and visual arts, you name it. We have so much damn talent in our communities, and we need to uplift them because art heals, cultura cura, and these are the kind of things that I want to spend the rest of my life doing, and not just fighting and bickering and outlefting each other on politics. Because I'm here for the cultural revolution, and in that, politics is just one part of that. Part of that is the artistic revolution and spiritual revolution and societal and all sorts of revolutions. Yeah,
Yeah.
environmental, and so on and so forth.
Big time. Yeah, definitely fights on all fronts. But yeah, I mean, just adding on to what you're saying about last show, I think our argument got out of control a bit, and we talked, and I think we just figured out how to make the conversation more productive. I don't think that's the purpose of the show, is to be two talking heads who are like going to bash each other, or we're trying to keep this show really, about the issues, and I think I feel like at least I said things that didn't need to be said or were over the line, but we continue moving forward, so yeah.
Absolutely. We're not Stephen A. Smith and Max Kellerman over here. We're not these ESPN talking heads that just like shout at each other. They're like, no, you are wrong. You are wrong,
Sir.
Sir.
We're trying to be an alternative to what that, like, the media has become more of a spectacle of people being disingenuous and yelling at each other. And I feel like in almost all the things we've done, like even in the activism that Jose and I have been in, it's always been about being different than what we're kind of forced. Like the media we're forced to do, the kind of organizing, the kind of relationships we're forced into in our daily lives. Like how can we reorganize this to be more humane and more make us feel more connected and like we have a sense of belonging. So, oh yeah, with that.
Yes, sir. And with that, from Dylan Thompson and Jose Gloria and all of us, shout out to Ben from Benjamin, all of us, It's Happening family, we are signing off.
It's happening. Oh. Is there music?
Para no ver lo que es verdad, te han engañado, no es libertad, lo que tú vives es vulgar, ser un esclavo sin descansar mientras que el burgués se aprovecha de tus labores, hay que luchar para vencer este sistema capital. Hay que leer